What's going on, everybody? It's your boy C-Zar, and we are talking about Litecoin today. We're going to compare Litecoin to Bitcoin to get an idea of if Litecoin really is ready to move up right now. Because when Litecoin does see its bull market come into full effect, whenever we do see some serious growth happen for LTC, that generally corresponds and correlates very well with growth versus Bitcoin as well. It makes sense. We go through a bullish phase with Litecoin. It's the lower market cap coin. Bitcoin might be going through the same bullish phase with Litecoin, or even the reason why Litecoin itself is moving up, because Bitcoin's moving up, but it has a higher market cap. It's easier for Litecoin to move up, therefore its Litecoin to Bitcoin chart might progress and move up as well. I do want to say some things though before we get started too much further. This is the LTC to BTC chart, right? And we're not going to use it. We're actually going to use the BTC to LTC chart because I think numerically it makes more sense. It'll give us a more accurate and pinpoint kind of idea of what to expect out of Litecoin by the end of the cycle and going forward from here, right? What I mean is here, if you look at it, the numerical value is 0.00, but that's not accurate. There's some kind of value. And then from here, all the way up to here, it's still 0.00. You could see a new high, and even at the high itself, it's at 0.00, right? A new high would actually be 0.01. But even then, you have to go all the way up here to get to. There's just a whole lot of change, and I feel like it might be more helpful if we saw the Bitcoin versus Litecoin chart instead of the Litecoin versus Bitcoin chart, right? They're the exact same. They're just inverse of each other. You can see it, right? I'm doing this for a reason. The RSI even, it's the exact same, just to the opposite effect. Okay, so this chart is Bitcoin priced in Litecoin. One Bitcoin is worth 916 Litecoins. I don't know about you guys, but to me, this looks like a very bullish chart. It looks like a very bullish chart that has very sharp drop-offs at times. That seems to be the personality of this chart, and it seems to me as though we might be in the face of one of those now. If we're on the monthly aspect here, we look at the RSI, you can see, if it'll let me double click, they have a high here and a lower high, paired with a high here and a higher high. That is bearish divergence at its finest. Now, I will say the one caveat to that is this month Litecoin, or the Bitcoin Litecoin chart, has already dropped all the way down to where the divergence formed, and you're back up here. So that divergence technically has already played out. And now what you have instead of lower highs is you have lower lows on your monthly RSI with higher lows. It's actually a very bullish thing. So a little bit of combativeness there. If anybody's looking at the chart and you're seeing bearish divergence and you think that means the price has to go down, that's not necessarily true. Though it could stand to reign true. It depends, as time goes on. I would suspect that it does. But what this is telling us at the very least is that it doesn't have to be now. Perhaps we go up a little bit more and then maybe we go down afterwards, right? Maybe Bitcoin gains value versus Litecoin for December, closes in 5 days, 18 hours. Maybe we close this month green a little bit. Maybe we even close it above this recent one here. And then we drop off after forming another drive of bearish divergence, right? If we get another high, if this month were to close above this high here, that'd give us double bearish divergence. If you want Litecoin to gain price versus Bitcoin, if you want it to gain price at all, you should want to actually see this chart in the next 5 days, 18 hours, close above that green candle there, which the numerical value would be 1,013 Litecoins. We want Bitcoin to close at more than 1,013 Litecoins in value. What I want to do, and that's just an idea, right? All I'm really trying to say by the end of this, guys, is that whether it is now, whether this divergence is to be taken seriously or not, whether we've completed it or not, whatever, whether we move up a little bit more first or not, we're soon to have these famous sharp corrections in the LTC BTC chart, BTC LTC chart. So I would assume that could imply Litecoin pumps soon. Let's see if that's valid. If we compare Bitcoin here, BTC, LTC, the Bitcoin Litecoin chart, if we can compare that to Litecoin itself, LTC USD here, new price scale, put it in log. Okay, I'm going to bring out the candles on this one instead of a line. I don't think we actually need candles. I think a line will do fine. I don't think we need candles. So let's keep it at a line. Candles are just distracting sometimes. The line, it'll prove the point, I promise. So what I want to do now is I want to take a vertical line and put it right here at the beginning of all these drops in the BTC LTC chart, okay, right here. And it should come as no surprise at all that all of these dropping points happen when LTC starts to go up in price, right? extreme dropping point there. We haven't started one yet here, right? But if you look here, we dropped hard this month on the BTC LTC chart. That means that Bitcoin was losing value versus Litecoin. In that same month, LTC went from a price down here, and I know it doesn't look like it, but just trust me, I'm reading this accurately. This month closed all the way over here at $3.05, or about $3 itself. The next month closed at $40. Okay, and that was the month that LTC or Bitcoin lost value and LTC saw a massive pump. Then Bitcoin starts gaining value versus LTC. We see the bear market happen, whatever. Big sell off here. You topped off here at the bottom of LTC USD chart. So Bitcoin losing value versus LTC resulted in Litecoin pumping up a lot. It went from a value of, and I can see the value over here. This is the Bitcoin value. On the left is the Litecoin value. At the bottom, you're at $1.50. You made a nice move up in a very short amount of time in the course of like 3 months, from $1.50 to $4.85. Not as immaculate as this move, but still pretty immaculate. Here you are at the top on this green month right here. That was your low in LTC USD price, your relative low, right before you had this cascade of events that took you higher. Lower prices versus Litecoin on the BTC LTC chart here resulted in the LTC USD chart moving up, right? LTC USD consolidates for a bit around the time that BTC LTC moves up even. And then once BTC LTC starts to move down again, that's when LTC USD starts to move up. LTC USD starts to move up after this white line here when the BTC LTC chart moves down. We're getting the same thing over and over again. I don't think I need to repeat myself. All I'm trying to say is that while yes, sometimes Litecoin can move up at a slow pace while Bitcoin is moving up faster than Litecoin. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes Bitcoin can gain value versus Litecoin and Litecoin's moving down, whatever. But every time that we see Bitcoin lose value versus Litecoin at a sharp rate like this, we see an immaculate growth in Litecoin in a very short amount of time. Even if it is only from $1.50 to $4.93 in three months' time, that's pretty immaculate for Litecoin, right? So looking at this now, knowing what we know, we take away the LTC USD chart and we're left with all these white lines. I'm going to zoom out. What could we do with this information? Let's measure it, right? Let's measure it. Let's do that. That's what we can do with this information. From this line here to this line, that took 17 months. From this line here to this line, that took 23 months. And by the way, that was like the whole bull cycle actually. This line here to this line, 9 months. This line here to this line, 12 months. This line here to this line, and that was the whole bull market. Again, look, these big gaps. Look at that 23 right here. That was the beginning of the bull market to the end. That's whenever you finally saw it. Beginning of the bull market here to the end. That's whenever you finally kind of saw that first drop, kind of at like the finality of Litecoin cycle, right? And then here, there, 15, and then 6. No, 5. So the longest instance without seeing a sharp decline in the BTC LTC chart, which would also result in a sharp pump in Litecoin, the longest instance we've had has been 27 months so far. The shortest instance has been 5 months. It's no doubt that we've been longer than 5 months, but let's see how long we've been right now. As of now, 25 months. Okay, if it's not striking you as to what's going on here, as to what I'm saying, essentially the two longest instances we have, which have been 23 months and 27 months, we're at 25 months, which is quite literally in between them. This is the amount of time that we've seen in Litecoin's history before seeing a sharp decline versus Bitcoin, which again results normally, actually not normally, every single time, in a sharp pump versus the US dollar for Litecoin. Okay? The longest times that we've seen so far have been 23 to 27. We're right in the middle of that range, quite literally at 25. So any given day, week, or month now, we likely will see BTC versus LTC drop pretty significantly. And I don't know how significant. Could it be, how big is this right here? From a high to a low. That's a 93% drop in the course of like 4 months. Here, it's an 87% drop, right? Here, that's a 75% drop. That's a 62% drop, right? Immaculate kind of drops throughout the whole thing. At least a, what is that, 62%? Is that the smallest one? What's this, high to low? 63? Is that the smallest one? High to low here? 52. 52 is the smallest one, okay. So 52% drop overall. That was the smallest one. That would put Litecoin, or Bitcoin itself, essentially, Bitcoin would be worth 556 Litecoins. Right now, Bitcoin's worth 916. This is where we'll tie everything together, okay? And then we'll end the video with this, okay? We'll do the math. I need to pull up the calculator because I don't want to do the math. I used to do the math all the time, but I've gotten lazy. Bitcoin, actually, BTC price. Bitcoin's at 98K right now. I would assume, personally, that if the BTC LTC chart dropped, that Bitcoin itself would not drop, right? Litecoin wouldn't move up and then Bitcoin drops. No, they both, Bitcoin probably moves up, Litecoin probably just moves up faster, right? That's what a drop in this chart would mean. Okay, so now that we have that established, let's run with this idea, this very simple idea, which is not going to be accurate. It's a lie, it's a false, but we're going to run with it anyways, okay? Let's say Bitcoin is worth 98K by the time we see the BTC LTC chart drop down to 553. Now we know that Bitcoin will not be worth 553 Litecoins and then also being worth 98K because we just established, right, that this drop would likely result in a pump both for Bitcoin, a smaller pump, and then Litecoin, a bigger pump. That's what results in this drop. It's never the price dropping that results in these sharp drops on the BTC LTC chart. It's never the price dropping versus US dollars that results in that. It's always the price going up. It's just Litecoin moves up faster, right? So assuming that you see a 53% drop, and the reason why I'm doing this at this price is because if Bitcoin's price was higher, this target that I'm about to give you is only more bullish, okay? So we're going to be conservative. This is unrealistically conservative, actually, right? Because again, if this chart drops down here, the price of Bitcoin will be higher, but we're going to do conservative targets anyways. 98.2K. Right now, one Bitcoin is worth 917 Litecoins at that price. If it were worth, at this low here, what's that? What's that? If it were worth 556 Litecoins, at 98.2K. 98.2 thousand. Okay, we'll just do that. That's too much. I'm sorry. 98.2 thousand right there. Divided by 556. I think that's right. Would mean $176 per Litecoin. Is that right? Is that what that would mean? That would have to be what it means, right? So that would be 176 per Litecoin, LTC USD. Right. You're at $107 now. If you saw this minimum drop, that might be anticlimactic. I understand that, but let's run with this idea. If you saw the minimum drop that you've ever seen for BTC versus LTC in its whole history of drops, which was about 52.6%. If you saw that minimum drop and the Bitcoin price stayed the same, which we already know that it wouldn't, it would grow. But if it stayed the same, that would essentially guarantee a price of 176 for Litecoin. So what this tells us is not that Litecoin's going to 176. What this tells us is it's not stopping there. It likely will go well beyond that, right? So that's all if Bitcoin is at that price, at its current price, 98.2K. And then if we only see a 53% drop instead of anything greater, that we've seen 62% drop, 63, 75, 87, 93, all bigger drops, right? Sorry. If Bitcoin was instead of at 98.2K, if it was at, let's say, 120K, which is, I think, a suitable target for when Litecoin starts to move up by the time that the BTC LTC moves down, right? Let's say it was at 120K. And I think Bitcoin will even be higher than this by the time that the BTC LTC chart is down at 576 or 556 there. By the time the BTC LTC chart drops down here, I would think Bitcoin is at a higher price than 120K personally. But 120K divided by 556, that would give Litecoin a price of about 215, right? We've already established that the minimum target for Litecoin was what it was 700 or 176, right? If we were, and that's not even the minimum price, right? That's not what that was. That was saying that we are guaranteed, essentially, quote unquote guaranteed, as long as Bitcoin moves up, to break this price, okay? If Bitcoin was at 120K, a more realistic number, that could be a more realistic price for Litecoin. But even then, that's still on the small end of things. What if Bitcoin drops? What if Bitcoin loses more value versus Litecoin, right? What if this number is smaller and we divide by a smaller number? This number would only go up, if that all makes sense, okay? But what we know is not where it's going to top. What we know is where it's going to break. It's at least going to break 176. We know that. It's not stopping here. It's at least going through that. So now that we have that, let's use our fibs from a relative high to, and see if we can make sense out of this, right? Relative high to low, what's beautiful about that line is it's right there at the golden ratio. And I've had suspicions this whole time that Litecoin could stop at its golden ratio, where a lot of coins go up here to the 786, 886. Litecoin, I've said, it has a chance to stop here. But I have said that I'm more prone to thinking that you go up here, right? That you go up to the 786, 886 area. I think this line confirms that. Because this, again, this is not your minimum target. This is the area that you would statistically, without a doubt, break, okay? And I don't know about you, but the 6.9, that's actually not a fib. It's not like a significant level that you are likely to find resistance at. There's no significant areas of price action, so the only level after that to really look forward to is the 786, which is at 253, right? And that would make sense. We can make sense out of 253. Why? Because if Bitcoin is at, let's say, 120K, and then instead of it being divided by 556, 120K, divided by, let's say, instead of it seeing a 53% drop, let's say we see the BTC LTC chart drop all the way down to these previous highs here, and it sees a 60% drop, okay? We're to see a 60% drop. It's worth 470 Litecoins. If you saw 120 divided by 470, and this is still just a random guess, that would put us at 255. And again, I think to me, this right here, this sounds like a more realistic prediction. We take this realistic prediction based off of what we can assume is realistic based off of this. The reason why I chose 470, I pulled it all the way down to 60%, is because that comes down to these previous highs here, okay? Somewhat significant in the price action here. It's just my best guess, right? Something that's in the middle of all of these drops. It's not too extreme to the downside. It's not too extreme to the minimum downside either, right? LTC at a price of 255 is exactly where the 786 is, right? If Bitcoin's at 120K. If Bitcoin instead, by the time LTC is finding highs at 140K, well, that could promote prices up to probably higher. I don't know. Let's see, 140K. What would that do? Because I do think Bitcoin could see $140,000 divided by, what was it, 470? Was it 470? Yeah, 470. Divided by 470. That gives you a price of about $300. And hey, that fits within our range, guys. So it's nice to see that even when we do the math differently, even when we're looking at the same asset but on a different chart with all this mess, and we do the math, it's nice to see that what we come to, what makes sense of a rational, reasonable, expectable target based off of what we've seen throughout the whole history in this perspective, let alone applying it to here, that it comes to the same exact target area, the 786, 886 area that we've been expecting for weeks now, for months now probably, right? So, or weeks, I would say. Months, probably months ago I was expecting the 61869, but relatively recently after this drop, that's when we've been expecting these targets. And I have to say, I was genuinely expecting that we didn't see the 886, but that we would stop right at the 786. That's kind of what I was expecting, or somewhere just below the 886. But I gotta say, I'm more optimistic now that we really could. You're at $106 now. You really could see Litecoin break above $300 by the end of January. It really could happen. And even more fuel to the fire, right? These moves do happen fast. You can see that they take 2 to 3 months normally to form. Well, you're on your second month now. The third month comes, so you're probably going to get a majority of that bulk drop happening soon. If not January, then it's a good case to be made that even February could be when Litecoin tops, which I don't expect personally, but I think I've said everything I need to say. I think I've made my point. So if you guys like the video, hit the like button. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this. It wouldn't surprise me if Bitcoin gained a little bit more value versus Litecoin over the coming days, maybe even over the coming weeks. But after this month of December, I think in January, we're really going to see this drop, this sharp drop that we're accustomed to on this BTC LTC chart. And that's what I'm looking forward to. Take care, everybody. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.